Hey everybody, DJ here with another DJ Helps video, and we are looking at another subscriber's project file here. So it looks like the very popular Blender Guru beginner's tutorial video on the donut scene. And what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be doing a quick bake out of some textures so that you can convert this over to Radeon Prorender. Now I'm going to be giving a couple other suggestions on how to deliver this to me, and a particular suggestion on the file naming convention. I know you didn't ask for that, but I'm going to give that anyway so that everybody kind of can share in the knowledge. So if I go to the rendered view here, you can see that there are some pink textures. So when you're delivering some of these to me, just make sure that you send me some image textures, especially if there's a specific area that you're looking for help with. Now, luckily for me, and I'm just going to turn off everything else here. Luckily for me, I have a previous, oops, we got rid of the donut on accident here. I have a previous texture for this donut. So if I go into let's actually use this one here. So if I go in here, I'm actually going to change this donut to this one here. And there we go. So hopefully this is something like what you have at home, uh, but let's just go from here. So basically what we have is, if we look at this node structure, is they are using a texture coordinate node, using the object data into some procedural noise textures here, and then combining those together to make a sort of speckled pattern, and then that's being fed into the principled BSDF, and it looks like there's a RGB curves node here, and technically this donut texture, since there's nothing connected here, it's actually using a UV to project it. So that's kind of what even though that's not there, that's what it's doing. Now, when converting to Radeon Prorender, I'm just going to move this over to the EV previewer really quick. When converting over to the Radeon Prorender, it's very important that you understand that some nodes don't work properly. So for example, this displacement node here is not going to really work properly, at least from what I can tell. It works a little bit differently inside of the program, inside of Radeon Prorender. And the object data texture coordinate for procedural textures isn't really working either. So you need to keep that in mind when you're doing a conversion, that you will need to bake out some of this stuff for it to look correct. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second here. So I'm going to save this out as a different name. And I already have one that I was like working on here. And I'm going to point this out so that everybody can see it. If you look at the naming convention here, there's like some commas and double periods here. I would not use this naming convention. I would never use commas in naming conventions. What in my opinion, how you should save this is you should save it as, and I'm just going to go to the desktop here, something like this. So donut underscore spoon underscore cup underscore V1. And then at the end here, I'm just going to put underscore RPR for the Radeon Prorender. And I'm going to save that. So I would use that naming convention instead. So let's save that. And let's take a closer look at this in Prorender. So let's go ahead and convert it, save the file again. And I save a lot when I'm doing conversions because you never know if you're going to crash Blender. So if we go over here to Radeon Prorender in your render settings, and you'll see all that stuff sort of change. And if we just look at this in the rendered view, and again, I'm going to save real quick. If we look at this in the rendered view, let's just take a look at how things are shaping up. And if you take a look at it here, it looks like the texture is quite a bit different. It's a lot darker, and you can see if you look really closely here that the procedural texturing is not being projected correctly. And that's because Radeon Prorender doesn't like this texture coordinate node. Okay. So you can use the UV, but the object data or generated doesn't really work. Now there are a couple ways we can do sort of like procedural texturing, but it really doesn't work that well in my opinion, and it's just better to bake out stuff like this. So we're going to do a very quick bake out of some of these textures so that you can run it through Radeon Prorender very quickly, and there's some automatic baking so you don't have to think too much about it, and you can just streamline your process. So first, what I'm going to do, because this will keep trying to update as we change things in here, I'm going to change this to solid, and I'm going to save this. And this displacement node, isn't really going to work that well, so I'm just going to disconnect this. And I'll just move it over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to bake out this node here and this node here. And when we bake those out, it's going to create some image textures, and it will then pipe those, or we will be able to pipe those into our shader. Okay. And before you do that, you'll want to go over here to the quality underneath in your render settings here. Go to quality here. Then go down to where it says node baking. And there's this button here that I find is bugged and doesn't really work, so I would not use that. But you can change the texture resolution that everything is baking out to. So if you click this drop down, change it to 4K, 2K, or any of these other ones here, you can go ahead and do that. I'm just going to leave it at 2048. And then if you go inside of your shader editor here, you can open up on the side panel over here. You can hit N or just drag it out. If you look under miscellaneous, this tab here, you'll see a thing that says RPR node bake. And what you want to do is click on the overlay here and this one here, since this was being piped into basically a displacement here, but really as far as what I could tell, it wasn't being used to actually displace the mesh. It was just kind of like being used as a bump map. So we can actually use, if we go here to vector bump, we can actually use this node instead of this one. And what we're going to do is we're going to bake these out. And what it's going to do when we click this button, it's going to basically go into the cycles engine, render out all of this stuff so that it's done according to whatever the cycles engine was doing. And we should be able to see the actual image texture here for the diffuse map or your base color map. And then here for your bump map, everything should be baked out just fine automatically. So make sure you have those selected. Then you will click this button here and we'll wait for it to bake out those textures. Okay, so here we go. We have the Mix 01 baked color here, and then we have a Mix baked color here. And I'm just going to pipe this into the right places. I'm going to save first before we look at it in rendered. And I'm going to take this. I'm actually going to move this into the bump node here. And since you had a scaling of 0.003, that might translate to a 0.003 here. Take the normal, throw it into there, and let's take a look. So there we go. You have your image that's been baked out. The image map has been baked out here. And you also have your bump map that has been baked out here. And so we can look at it, throw it into the base color, and that is what your bump map should basically look like. Let's throw this back into here, and we can change the bump or the height on that bump map to whatever it is that you want it to be. You can control that right here. So let's put that back to a 0.003. So that's basically going to be it for this. It's just a really, really quick way to bake these out. And what you'll want to do, this is my recommendation, is that you'll want to go into the image editor here. You'll want to find your different baked textures and save these out so that nothing happens to it, because right now they're just saved internally with the actual Blender file. So you want to save these out to individual image textures just so that you know where they are and can adjust them if you need to. But that's basically how you can automatically bake out textures using Radeon Prorender and the automatic buttons here inside the engine. So thanks very much for the question and for sending me your session so that I can show everybody how you can do this. If you're a subscriber and you'd like some help, please leave a message or a comment or question on any of my videos, and I will try to get to that as I can. And please be sure, if you're not a subscriber, to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you enjoy the content here, and I will see you guys next time.